You may have a wonderful reusable asset, but if the people in the enterprise don't know that there's a reusable asset which can be accessed in an easy way, then it will be a step to failure. So it is equally important that in your maturity assessment, having a very good user-friendly, a very nice user interface with that, and we need to have a very good integration marketplace. We should be having it. That is also very key for reusability, I would say. Product it's a never done approach, right? It's always continuously evolving, continuously being innovated over a period of a time. So managing APIs and events as a product, it shifts the thinking from that it is like a fire and forget. I'm developing an interface one time from a A to B kind of a thing. The people will move away from that mindset, mentioning that I'm owning a product, which is always a never done approach. You need to continuously innovate, you need to version it, and also you are listening to the customer needs. It is not that what you think is right. With the product mindset, you engage with your consumers or customers continuously, take feedback, continue to improve on the product.
Welcome to the new automation mindset, where AI, automation, and integration come together. I'm your host, Markus Zirn, and as Chief Strategy Officer and part of the founding executive team at Workato, it is my mission to find these top innovators in AI, automation, and integration and share their journeys with all of you. So today I have with me Suresh Jaganathan from Roche. So Suresh, welcome. I'm actually really excited. I mean, you have so many years of experience building federated integration delivery. And that's actually across two really big companies, first Unilever and then Roche, where you're now. And so in our book, The New Automation Mindset, we're talking, we have a whole chapter around scale mindset, and it's about how you scale automation integration across a company beyond just a small central team. So your experience, super interesting, really tried to bring to life a little bit what that scale mindset is all about. And I'm sure the audience is really curious to learn from your experience. So let's jump right in. Maybe first question is really, why federated delivery? So I tell you what, so at Workato, we've seen the need for kind of more decentralization in the integration delivery, but we've seen it mostly with companies that had super high growth, like a Slack, a HubSpot, an Atlassian. They just couldn't, the small team just wasn't big enough. They had to decentralize or federate. They just couldn't handle it. Now, you're working at Unilever and Roche, and those are much more established, I would say, I guess, much more stable companies. So why did you make that move?
Hi, Markus. Morning. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Right. So that's a good question. So why we went ahead with that federated delivery model? So taking a step back, nowadays, any enterprise is always keep reinventing themselves. There's nothing called as a stability, right? So each organization come up with new ideas, new business capabilities, new business models. So everybody is reinventing themselves at a faster pace across the globe. So to meet that ever-changing, faster needs, if we go ahead with the traditional integration mindset of doing it everything in a central way, controlling central governance, it will become a bit bottleneck. So that's where we want to do the things differently, even in a big Fortune Global 500 company, which is where I'm currently working now, is a big pharma industry. The earlier one, it is one of the global fast-moving consumer goods industry. So there is nothing called stable from my perspective. So to be zooming in on why we have done it in both the places, the first one is the scalability and flexibility. At any point of a time, the amount of the new programs or projects, it keeps on rising and the demand is very high. So the central team cannot manage the demand. And the flexibility is also the question, right? So there's a lot of processes and central governance. That flexibility was missing in the centralized delivery. And the second one is the enhanced collaboration. So if for cross-functional collaboration by distributing integration responsibilities, the federated model promotes a very good collaboration between different teams, bringing their unique expertise and insights. They'll come with a completely a different perspective. And also, whatever they have invented in one federated team, it can be brought to a centralized marketplace so that the assets can be reused in multiple federated teams and also by the central teams. So enhanced collaboration is a very key thing. And the third one I can talk about is faster time to market, because quite a lot of the business capabilities need to be launched at a faster pace, if not all. So if you want to adopt the faster time to market philosophy, definitely federation is very key. And nowadays, quite a lot of the business domain teams, they have a very good IT acumen and they have a lot of IT capabilities. So by federating it, they are able to do it at a much faster pace, resulting in faster time to market. And the fourth one is that may be surprising to you, an improved compliance and governance. Because in some of the business domains, there will be a different set of compliance requirements may be required. So those kind of things, we cannot take it to a central level and understand their compliance and the governance or regulatory expectations. If I talk about an example related to product development in the pharma, which is part of R&D scenario, there's quite a lot of regulatory compliance are in place. So those kind of things, the respective the business domain IT teams have a much more better knowledge than the centralized IT teams. So they'll be able to do it much better. And also in the product roadmap, they can utilize the resource in an optimized way, and they can prioritize and they can do it. Then last but not the least, the overall risk management and the resilience abilities, they can design it in such a way according to the business requirement. So that is a key thing. So overall, the summary is it is vital not only for a fast growing companies, even for a large and complex organizations. It is very much important for scalability, flexibility, faster time to market, and most importantly for improved collaboration.
There's a lot to digest here. I think you that was a super comprehensive answer. Let me dive a little into some of those. I mean, the one, and let me start with the one where you said like you might be surprised, right? This is a really interesting one, and so maybe you can add a little more color to it. I think you're exactly right? So when you have a more regulated industry or one where like quality and risk really matters, I think the fact when you have something faster moving or more decentralized, I think you actually have a better chance to meeting those requirements, right? Because and tell me a little bit. So one thing that's going through my head is that maybe because if you're faster and you can iterate faster, maybe you can actually achieve higher quality. Because if you only get one shot, maybe it's never going to be perfect. If you can iterate 3 times, you'll get to something much, much better. So you're almost like through speed, you're gaining compliance in a way almost. Is that how you're looking at it, or help the audience understand that kind of somewhat counterintuitive insight there? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. So what you said is right. So it means that when you iterate multiple times, you will get a better quality, and also all these open compliance topics can be addressed. The another thing is when I speak about the R&D perspective, so there are certain specific compliance requirements, how you need to interact the message with the partners, with the contract manufacturing organizations, and with the government authorities. There are some specifics out there. So those kind of regulatory and compliance specifics, the respective business domain IT product teams, they are more knowledgeable in the regulatory and compliance topics than the centralized IT teams. And also there are compliance needs keeps on changing, and it is a continuous evolving thing in the market about the compliance requirement from the government authorities and the medical authorities. It is a continuous evolving thing. So those kind of things, the respective the business domain IT teams may be able to understand much more better than the centralized IT team.
Mm. It's really interesting because when people talk about governance, right? So it almost feels like, if you have central governance, if all you do with the central team, it seems like you're the safest, right? Nothing can go wrong. But then what you're saying is the federation actually lets you better adapt to the specific compliance needs. Actually, it's almost like that central team might be overwhelmed by all that specificity of the compliance requirements.
Right. Of course, there are few scenarios where a certain type of a compliance is better in central teams, and there are a few types of compliance needs which is more regulatory in nature. Those kind of things is better in the federated team. So there are pros and cons in each of the approach, but in the continuous evolving market with the faster needs and the new business capabilities, federation is the way forward. Of course, it is not only the federation is the only way forward. In both in Unilever and Roche, what we are doing is a balanced approach. So we have a concept of a big ship, and there's a concept of a speedboat. Wherever it is a speedboat concept where we federate it, think about a scenario like an ERP where a centralized delivery is still preferred for a big ship kind of an approach. So it means that even within the same enterprise, depends on whether it is a big ship or a speedboat, you need to change it to either a centralized delivery model or into a federated model. So both has its own pros and cons. Depends on the scenarios. One will suit best and another ones will suit best for another scenario.
Yeah. Okay. The one thing that you touched upon was that collaboration with the business, right? I guess the more you go federated, the more specific collaboration you have with the business. Gartner talks about these fusion teams of IT and the business coming together. I guess that was very important there for you guys as well. It seems like when you have a central team, you can only collaborate so much at a certain high level, whereas if you federate it, you get a much more meaningful fusion team in a way.
Agree. So that is one aspect of the collaboration with the business team. That is a no-brainer. That is a big advantage. The another advantage which I said earlier is about bringing in new innovations, new tools and accelerators. It means that it will make the life simpler, not only for the one federated team. So what we do is we will harness the assets which are reusable in nature. So those things into a central marketplace so that all the federated teams and the central teams can reuse the same tools and accelerators or the reusable assets. So that in that way, the collaboration is much more spread across all the federated teams, and they share their best practices and learnings, and they learn from each other.
This is actually really interesting too, because, in what we do with integration or an API first approach to integration, maybe a microservices architecture, what you want. I mean, reuse is always a big part of why we do that, right? I guess what you're saying is that once you go federated, your chances of actually driving reuse are much better than if you stay central.
Yes. The probability of reuse is much higher, not only from the business APIs, like a purchase order or an invoice. I'm talking about some of the reusable assets which are technical in nature, say, for example, an API template or an API accelerator. So it means that when you want to develop a new API, those kind of accelerators will help you to make a jump start. So those kind of tools and accelerators where it can be done by one federated team because of the level of innovation is very high if you federate, and that can be reused elsewhere. So in that way, it promotes more and more collaboration.
Did you see any differences? You've done this at Unilever and then at Roche. Roche, obviously, you alluded to it, pharma company, more regulated in a way. Unilever, consumer products, consumer product goods. Any learnings there? Any adaptation to these different industries?
Right, as you said, Roche is a pharmaceutical company, so that is where more CSP and the regulatory things comes into picture. So it means that while federating or setting up a platform, we should take care of those security needs and the regulatory needs into picture. So other than that, this one difference about this regulatory needs because of the pharma industry, I have not seen any major differences. The same set of advantages, the same set of challenges I have seen in both places, almost a similar experience, except this security part and regulatory part.
Mm. In size of company, I mean, both are giants, right? I think Unilever is even bigger, but you know,
both
I guess
are almost same in terms of
both are almost
sales,
the same, right? Yeah,
almost
yeah.
the same.
Okay. And in both, you kind of needed that federated. I mean, in both companies, you saw that bottleneck in the first place, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So with the centralized team, always it is a bottleneck, and also there's an appetite with the various what I can call it as a business IT domain teams, that they are becoming more and more tech savvy. They want to take more responsibilities. Of course, initially it is not an easy thing to start the federation part, but we have identified some quick wins. Say a couple of business domain IT teams with the both arms, they have grabbed it because there are tech savvy people over there. And when we have exhibited the success story to others, slowly the adaptation for the federated one started growing in both the places. But initially it was a struggle where we need to find some pilot, a couple of teams. So once it is a matter of ensuring that we handhold those teams and make them successful, and after that the news spreads, then it is easy to do the federation. But one other key thing is not all the teams can do it. So as I said, we need to have a hybrid approach in the company like Unilever or Roche. So we should have a concept of centralized team for big ships and a federated approach for speedboats.
You made a good point about like the business becoming more tech savvy. You know, here in Silicon Valley, where we are, like, you know, about 5 years ago, people like CIOs started to call themselves the head of business technology. And they wanted to make that point that actually they are getting more business oriented in a way, less infrastructure, more getting into understanding what it actually is that they're influencing. I guess the federated approach is probably also the best way to kind of get closer from IT and business side. You know, IT getting more involved in business topics and business more involved in technical topics. It seems like that federated model is probably the best way to get closer together.
I agree. I have seen the trend not only where I'm working now, but across the industry also. I have seen that happening and collaborating much better now. When I went about in Roche, the business domain IT teams, it is not the real business. This is the IT team who are doing primarily the business partnering and delivering the big programs.
Understood. All right, so let's go a little bit look into the details of it. So I mean, we started talking a little bit about API led. You know, for you guys also, and I know you are passionate not just about API led, but about event driven architecture as well. And you know, your federated delivery, I think at both company comprised both of it, right? API led and EDA architectures. What are the scenarios for these different patterns? How do you make those work together?
Sure. And so when we have done the greenfield strategy, initially we started with API, and we also quickly identified that it needs to be complemented with event-driven architecture as well. So they are complementary to each other. It is not like they are stepping on each other. So they are complementary to each other. So the API-led integration architecture, we primarily use it for north-south traffic on demand, and also for any technical transformation aspects. We use heavily the API-led architecture. Wherever it is like an east-west traffic fan-out model, and where there are multiple subscribers, and where there's a concept where you need a topic taxonomy, you need to subscribe to a topic taxonomy. So those kind of scenarios, we use a event-driven architecture. So it means that when an event is happened, it needs to be fanned out to multiple subscribers. So that is where that east-west traffic, that event-driven architecture becomes a complementary to the API-led architecture. So even for a single business requirement, there are scenarios we have identified that both API-led and event-driven architecture both come into play. For example, a batch master. In case of a regulatory pharma environment, a batch is a key thing. So for a batch, a master is required. So that batch master can be created by multiple applications, and those things create into the core ERP system via a batch API, which is like a on demand, the thing is happening. And once that batch is created in the core ERP system, that information need to be fanned out to 10 different consumers. So that we use event-driven architecture. So for a single business entity batch master, we have both APIs and event working together.
So this isn't just only application integration. There's also data integration when you talk about batches, right? I think you're also talking about data warehouses and so on. Or is that separate?
So when I meant batch, it is not about the data batches. It is also about the business entity when we produce pharma goods. So the batch of the goods that has a master data.
Understood. All right. No, very good. So I think this is useful. So I'm putting myself in the shoes here of someone in the audience who says like, okay, well, Suresh made a really good point why federated delivery really is the way to go forward. And it seems to make sense. It almost, I mean, based on what you said, it's almost like, you know, there's no good reason not to do it, right? Now, you've done this now for what, over 10 years? I mean, you learned a lot. Can you give some advice to someone who wants to start this now? So based on maybe what you learned, war stories, like what, you know, over these 10 years, what maybe worked, maybe what didn't work and you had to adjust. Maybe if you were to start this a third time now, anything you would do differently, or you know, basically your learnings from these 10 years, so people can start with your expertise base.
Sure. So for the people who are going to start new, this based on my past experience, I would recommend them first do an integration maturity assessment. So that maturity assessment, you need to see that where you stand now. Is it 2 in a scale of 5 or 3 in a scale of 5? For example, if you are very basic 2 in a scale of 5, so I would recommend that you do a greenfield integration strategy, or at least a brownfield integration strategy, by modernizing the integration capabilities. Ensure that you have an API-led and event-driven architecture integration capabilities, where it can have a hybrid things, on-premise, cloud, and both hybrid together. So you need to establish that one first, and ensure that the platform is fit for purpose for the federated and as well as the centralized delivery model, and ensure that you have an integration champions internally in your team to ensure that you go and train the various IT and the business entities within the organization, and ensure that you work with at least a couple of teams where they become a pilot, and ensure that you handhold them to ensure that the pilot is very successful, and then do it on a MVP approach. So don't boil the whole ocean. Pick up one or two at a time. Enable them, because enablement is very important. So just continuously enable them and ensure that slowly you increase the number of teams who are going in a federated way. And another critical point is enablement is not a one-time fire and forget exercise. It is a continuous exercise. So you need to have integration champions in your integration center for enablement team, so that integration champions do continuously engage with all the federated teams, so that they are not like a policeman. It is more like a customer success person. So they engage with that federated teams to continuously educate them, and if there are new requirements, collaborate with them to ensure that the delivery is successful. And also, if there are any reusable assets, harvest those assets and put in the marketplace. Those things are very, very critical. And to your other question, what I will do differently, One thing which I regret I was doing is I was training some of the Java developers or ABAP developers in the pro integration tools in the federated model. So I was expecting that those people quickly pick up those complex integration tools, but later on, it is a lessons learned that for using this pro integration tools, you need an integration technical expert of doing it. So it means that even if you federate it, the federated team, you need to have an integration technical people. Of course, some of the tools are like a citizen integrator or a less technical people also can handle it. Some of the tools are available in the market, but it has its own pros and cons. But the tool what we have is an enterprise class tool where only a technical experts can operate it. So there we have failed by training an ABAP developer or a regular Java developer. So that is one learning I want to share here.
Mm-hmm. That sounds interesting. So and we'll get to the citizen integrator topic in a second. But one thing that we noticed with some of our customers at Workato was, some organizations have people really in these groups of the applications. So the people really know their applications. There, as you said, there might be ABAP developers there, but they live within the boundaries of their applications landscape. And so one thing that we noticed that you really need a strong enterprise architect who can look across multiple applications to make the integration delivery also successful. A lot of it, lives and dies with the skill and the mindset of these enterprise architects. Does that sound familiar? I mean, did you feel that way, or was that less of an issue at Roche?
That was less of an issue at Roche because when there's a product is built or a program is being carried out, the respective enterprise architect or the solution architect for that program, they are able to see the bigger picture and they are able to get what needs to be integrated, how it should be integrated. They will discuss with an integration architect also. So that is one other point. It is not sufficient. The solution architect is designing the integration also. So you need to have an integration architect also should be in the mix, should be working with the bigger program solution architect to make it successful. So that is one of the key learning. We cannot leave the overall integration design to the big solution architect. So there should be an expert integration architect also should be there in the mix.
That's good. Look, I think that's probably where you have an advantage working in these larger, more mature companies, that these people are there. Like, some of the companies earlier in their life cycles, they might not have that maturity on the enterprise or solution architecture side. I do want to dig into the citizen integrator topic a little bit, because that's interesting. I mean, it's been a big topic also with Gartner and the other analysts. And you made the point is like you tried to get some of the Java or ABAP developers to pick it up. At Workato, we're trying to get some of the application admins also, like, Salesforce admin, also someone to pick it up. Yeah, tell me a little more. Like, what were the issues? What made this hard? And can you see, like, with any changes in the future, how maybe we can get there? Because at the end, the more people I think who will get involved, I think again that all the benefits of that federated delivery model will further prosper, I believe, right? So I guess it's still one of these open frontiers.
Yes, it is definitely the whole integration. The iPaaS vendors need to mature thing. Of course, there are few iPaaS providers who are much more matured here in the terms of citizen integrator. They do quite well. But quite a lot of pro integration tools providers in the iPaaS category, it is quite tough for a kind of an ABAP developer or a regular Java developer to pick it up. So it needs an experience to build in there. But the good news is I have checked in the professional network as well. most of the iPaaS vendors are working on to get into the level of the citizen integrator toolset capabilities. And also, we are also influencing our vendor to get into more and more citizen integrator friendly tool capabilities. So it will take a few more years to reach there. Of course, already few of the vendors, as I said, already they are higher in the maturity level, but the other vendors are following the suit. But definitely, I'm a firm believer that citizen integrator is the way to go, but it may take few more years to reach the higher maturity level.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think the term citizen integrator, sometimes people also misinterpret like how far you can actually push it. Citizen integrator almost sounds like anybody can do it, any citizen. I mean, that's probably unrealistic. But
Exactly.
how can we get like the next layer of people involved? At Workato, again, as I said, we're trying to get the basic IT people, the application admins is kind of what we're really targeting. You tried to get the Java developers involved, but all of these are layers, that are really important. This is really interesting, and maybe gives us a roadmap also of what is possible in the next 5 years, right?
Exactly. So maybe we should rename something a much more a fancier name, because citizen integrator may be misleading. It is like anybody in the business can do it, but it is not the case. We are talking about an IT savvy person or an IT expert in a different area will be able to do that. That's what we are focusing on now. Maybe we should find some other fancy name for that.
It's overhyped. It kind of
exactly.
I think the journey is really important, but I think if you name it something that is too far and unrealistic, then people get tripped up about it. I believe. I don't like the citizen integrator. The citizen in it just seems like it's unattainable. But tell me, I mean, look. There's a lot of things we can do better, but you guys, I think, achieved a lot, right? So, I mean, I read it, Forrester. I mean, they basically really said, like, what you guys did, what you did at Roche is high performance IT. So tell me a little bit. I mean, and that's a big compliment. What are you the most proud of when you think back of like, this like 10 plus years of driving that federated delivery model? What sticks with you that you feel like, man, this is really something incredible we achieved?
I would like to call out three things. Number one, we have improved the integration value chain, because earlier people were thinking about that integration is only for integrating between two different applications or for data integration, so on and so forth. But it is used for faster time to market, which is up in the value chain. Then beyond that, reusable assets, and we are building a composable enterprise. And then how you can bring value to the business because of the composable enterprise, and also easily because of the faster time to market and many other initiatives. And very much higher in the value chain, how it can contribute to the society. For example, in one of the case in Roche, where we have built an API to the healthcare providers, where the time to therapy for patients is improved by more than 75%. So what we are proud is, one is improving the integration value chain. And the second one is, we have brought in the product mindset for managing the APIs and events. So APIs and events needs to be managed as a product with a product mindset. So we call here as an enabling product, because this is not a main product. For a main product, this is an enabling product, and this also to be managed with a product mindset. And we do have the concept of API owners. Of course, we have not achieved for all the APIs, but in our journey, we are going on a right path. And the third thing, what we are proud of, is we have achieved the integration marketplace. Of course, it is still maturing, but we have made a good start, where we have published quite a number of reusable assets in the integration marketplace.
Okay, I think this is, again, just like at the beginning, I think you gave us a lot to digest here. And I want to really go into these things one by one, because I think this is really important. So reusability. I think this is one of the things that, if you talk about API led and so on. I mean, reusability comes up all the time, and then unfortunately, what we see often, it's set out at this main goal, and then actually many organizations don't get that far. They're actually disappointed often how much reusability they actually drive. It seems like that federated delivery model is really key to kind of making that reusability vision become key. Anything else that sticks in your mind? I mean, if you told someone, okay, you here's something someone in the audience, here's someone you should stop doing and change a little bit to actually drive reusability, what would that be? Is it the federated model? Is there some other advice?
I would advise them that to have a very good user-friendly marketplace, which is very, very key for the reusability. The reason being, you may have a wonderful reusable asset, but if the people in the enterprise don't know that there's a reusable asset which can be accessed in an easy way, then it will be a step to failure. So it is equally important that in your maturity assessment, you should put having a very good user-friendly, a very nice user interface with that, and we need to have a very good integration marketplace. We should be having it. That is also very key for reusability, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And then the second one was, you mentioned that I hear actually a lot of IT people mention that these days, which is kind of that product mindset to IT, right? I guess it's a shift from more of a project mindset to a product mindset, which obviously, look, it resonates a lot with me. My career was in product management. I ran the product management org at Oracle for middleware. I ran the product team at Splunk. So my life is product management. But I think, I worked in software products. You guys are doing IT delivery. Tell me why that product mindset is so important, or what people can benefit if they switch from more of a project thinking to a product thinking.
Right. So the product mindset is all maybe taking a step back. It's a never done approach, right? It's always continuously evolving, continuously being innovated over a period of a time. So managing APIs and events as a product, it shifts the thinking from that it is like a fire and forget. I'm developing an interface one time from a thing A to B kind of a thing. The people will move away from that mindset, mentioning that I'm owning a product, which is always a never done approach. You need to continuously innovate. You need to version it. And also you are listening to the customer needs. It is not that what you think is right. You always, with the product mindset, you engage with your consumers or customers continuously, take a feedback, continue to improve on the product. So that gives a very good customer satisfaction, a better business value. And also the life cycle is much more a higher level of maturity will be there in the life cycle. And another important thing is, based on the continuous usage, looking at the statistics, how it is used, you will ensure that you are adequately sizing the infra or scaling the infra on the need basis. So it gives more resilience and stability to the product, which is the enabling product. I mean, the APIs and events. And also with the product mindset, if somebody is looking for a reusability, you have an API owner or an event owner so that he validates whether it is a valid request for reusing in another business IT domain or not. You will approve or reject in a faster manner. It promotes reusability also. So having a product mindset has various advantages. I spoke about a higher maturity in the life cycle, better reusability, more innovation, better new features, more resilience and stability. So it has multiple advantages.
Mm-hmm. This is, I think there's a lot to learn. I mean, if people, the whole agile development, it comes from product organization. I think there's a lot of applicability for IT also. I think you're onto something. But But last but not least, maybe the you started with the most important one. So I'm saving the best for last here, which was really around that business impact. I love the story where you said like, hey, look, we were able to build an integration that really made a difference, not just for the company, not just for our core processes, but, really for people, for patients. So here's the funny thing: when we started off the conversation with this bottleneck, and doing federation because we might be overwhelmed with a central team. Some people would come to me and say like, what are you talking about, Markus? We're fine. We use here integration. There's like, order to cash, procure to pay, and then we're done, right? And I think the issue is that I think there's so much potential for integration, but often people look at it with such a narrow mindset as just the three most mission critical processes, right? And they get those right and they think they're done. And therefore, they almost feel that there's no bottleneck because they define the potential of integration as something too small. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you kind of imagine what you could do, I mean, with that mindset, I don't think you would ever think about, what can we do for a patient? Like, how can we drive that beyond the boundaries of Roche? How can we integrate with hospitals or whatever this might be? Does that ring a bell to you? I mean, my feeling is that as practitioners, as like a integration people that we are, sometimes I feel a lot of us don't look at the total potential of what's possible here. There's so much more we could do.
Exactly. So that's where I spoke about the integration value chain, because the traditional mindset is to look at the integration value chain only from connecting A to B and ensuring that reusability. Of course, that maturity is like 3 in a scale of 5. So we have to look beyond that, like a faster time to market, bringing in new business capabilities, faster time to market in creating an omni-channel kind of a feature, and also bringing in value to the society also. So it has a possibility in multiple dimensions. So we should explore not only from a connectivity perspective between A to B, we should explore the various dimensions of the value chain. And I would say that we are also learning in the process, but we have gone to a greater extent to the top of the value chain in many scenarios. But there are many more scenarios possible in the future also. But we are continuously exploring how we can break the ceiling and continue improve the integration value chain.
Yeah, to me, it almost like feels like this is at the crux of the whole thing. Like, if your mindset is just focused on what you know already, you might not understand why federated delivery really matters, right? Because you can't imagine what potential there will be. And then probably if you have that mindset, you might also not recognize why working more closely with the business is really so important, because I'm sure that things like this improving patient experience overall, it came about with a close collaboration between business and IT. I mean, it seems like evident to me. And so a lot of what you said, a lot of deconstruct, it's almost like a conundrum. You have to break through that mindset. And once you do, and once maybe you have this little project that created a lot of business value, then you kind of see what more is possible. And then that bottleneck becomes just more and more evident, because maybe it'll actually become bigger and bigger by the day, because you have more and more opportunity to improve the business.
I can't agree more. You have summarized it quite well. So federation is one of the key to ensure more and more innovation, and for moving up in the value chain of integration, it is very key.
Mm-hmm. Well, listen, Suresh, this was fantastic. Actually, really helped me shape some of my thinking here. It's very inspirational what you have achieved in such large companies. And it's not easy to drive this kind of change in large enterprises, but then the outcome, the result is obviously really great. I want to thank you, and I hope this was inspiring for everyone who was listening to them to really give federated integration delivery a chance, because I think the business outcomes that comes with it, the speed, the agility, and so on, I think once you do it, you can never go back. So thank you, Suresh.
Thank you very much, Markus. Great questions. I really enjoyed the interaction. And as usual, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Please make sure to rate today's episode, leave us a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the show so you will never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.